Hey, FOMOSAPIENS, it's summertime, and that means it's time to take a little break. But a break doesn't mean you can't go back and enjoy the things that you truly love. And that's why this week I am presenting to you one of my favorite episodes of FOMOSAPIENS ever. It's my conversation with Jay Shetty. And this is a two-parter, so we're going to show part one this week. Not show, but I guess tell part one this week, and then part two next week. Now, if you don't remember Jay, I aired my episodes with him a long time ago. We are talking about 2020. And the conversation that we had was amazing. Basically, Jay is this guy who basically went from a corporate life to becoming a monk. And then from there became this influencer on Facebook, sharing insights of wisdom from the ancient texts of the Hindu tradition. And now he has a podcast. He is kind of everywhere. But he's a really great guy. When he came in and interviewed, he was so down to earth. And I read his book, Think Like a Monk. I loved it. And we're going to talk about, in part one, his journey from kind of just this normal kind of bro, as it were, to becoming a monk and what he learned. And the next week, we'll continue on with a conversation about meditation. So enjoy, apply sunscreen if needed, and relax. This is a great episode. FOMO.
I decide what I feel success to me looks like in a year or for a project. So for me in 2018, success to me was really dialing in on the content I was creating online. Success to me in 2019 was launching my podcast. Success in 2020 is launching my book. So that's what I'm focused on. So I'm very clear, first of all, about what I really care about. On top of that, I'm now looking at other opportunities coming in. I'm saying, is it serving this bigger goal? If it's serving this bigger goal, then I can take it right now because it's direct, right? It's a direct thing that's going to have an impact right now on the goal that I have. If I'm seeing, I'm rarely holding out for a hopeful long-term win. If there's a strategic long-term win, then I can wait.
That's Jay Shetty, author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, Think Like a Monk. I'm your host, Patrick McGinnis, and this is FOMOSAPIENS. When the world's spinning out of control, it can be impossible to know what to do and what to miss out on. That's called FOMO, which is short for fear of missing out. How do I know? Because I coined the term, and I'm the world's first FOMologist. And this is the show where I ask entrepreneurial thinkers, people I call FOMOSAPIENS, how they live and work with conviction no matter what life throws at them. FOMO. Welcome to a new season, season 5 of FOMOSAPIENS, and I am so excited to be here with you, and we're starting the season out with a bang with our guest, Jay Shetty, author of Think Like a Monk, podcaster, video producer. I mean, this guy is everywhere. He's huge, and he's with us today. We're also starting this season with a fresh new look, a new logo, a new website at FOMOSAPIENS.com. So I'm really excited that we are turning over a leaf, trying new things, coming out with a fresh look, and all the stuff you loved from before with just a little bit more extra on top of it. Now, let me tell you about today's guest, Jay Shetty. Jay's life story is incredible. He grew up in a typical household in London, but after a chance meeting with a monk, he made a radical change, and at the age of 22, he went out to live as a monk across India and Europe, trading his suits for robes, waking up at 4 a.m., taking cold showers, and meditating for as much as 8 hours a day to train his mind. Then he applied the wisdom he had gained living as a monk in a very unexpected way. He started creating videos about how the mindset of a monk can be applied in the business world and in daily life. Fast forward a few years, and Jay's videos have garnered billions of views. He also has a hit podcast on purpose and over 7 million followers on Instagram. I mean, the guy is followed by Jennifer Aniston, if you can believe that. Basically, he is one of the most viewed people on the internet internationally. But the best part is, he's also a really great guy. He's very down to earth. I spent time with him. He's completely approachable, and he's the real deal. So I just really enjoyed meeting him, and I think he has really valuable insights to share, as you will see in our discussion. Then stick around for the FOMO moment of the show, where I'm going to tell you what I've been up to since last season and talk more about what to expect in this season of FOMOSAPIENS. There's a lot of great things happening, and I cannot wait to share them with you. And now, on to the interview. Despite his huge reach, I actually had to admit to Jay when we chatted that I hadn't heard of him before his team reached out about coming on the show. They sent me his book, and when I read it, it was all new to me, and I was completely blown away. I love the book, and I especially love the title, Think Like a Monk. So I started our conversation by asking Jay why he decided to go with that title.
So the reason why the book is called Think Like a Monk is because I believe we're living at a time that's full of uncertainty, full of chaos, full of pressure, stress, full of a lack of direction and meaning. And I believe that anyone who's listening and watching, and people have really got to a place right now where they've started to realize that the answer to all of that is not going to come from outside of them. That's not suddenly going to be solved by a person, a place, a leader, a inventor, a creator. No one's going to just suddenly make that all disappear. And I think we started to understand that it has to come from us. And when I lived as a monk and then went and studied the brains of monks, and when I say studied, I mean read incredible studies and had incredible research.
No, you were doing a
training,
dissection
not that I was
home.
not that I cut up any monks' brains. I found that monks have the happiest, calmest, and most focused brains on the planet. And I thought to myself, in this crazy world that we're living in, why wouldn't any of us want to be calmer, happier, and more focused? And I think all of us would want to, and hence the book title, Think Like a Monk. It was, how can we all, without living like monks, learn to think like monks so that we can actually find calm in the chaos, where we can find stillness in this world that we live in, and actually find a space where we feel we deeply understand who we are. And that's really what monks do. So I thought, why not help everyone think like a monk?
And you grew up in North London.
Yes.
You were, normal upbringing, sort of the typical person. And one day, and you talk about this in the book and in a lot of your work, you're going to go to a club later, and then and a friend asked you to go to see a monk speak. And so you're like, okay, fine. I'll go with you to see the monk if you come with me to the club, which is awesome.
That was the deal.
That would have been the way I would have done it as well. And you went into that room, and in the book, you say you fell in love, and not like a romantic love, of course, a different type of love. And that became sort of this lodestar for you. You began this journey where you actually moved to India and lived as a monk for 3 years. And it was a major crossroads in your life. So tell us a little bit about that moment where you had this crucible discovery that you wanted to do something that was completely outside of anything that probably, you had thought about doing before.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those moments in life where you think about like sliding doors, right? It's almost like, if that moment didn't happen, where would I be? Or if you could go back to that moment and let's say I skipped seeing the monk and I went to the bar only, where would my life be today? And I always think about that moment as being one of those. And I'm sure anyone who's listening or watching right now, there's probably a moment in your life where you feel like, if I didn't meet this person or if I didn't go to this place, then what if? So for me, meeting that monk was a surprise in my life because I wasn't looking for spirituality. I wasn't looking for philosophy. I wasn't looking for a path. I was actually pretty happy in life. I'd say that I had a lot going for me and I was pretty confident at that time and things were okay. Like there was nothing that I could say I was like missing. And that's what the amazing thing was, that even though I didn't find I was missing anything, meeting him made me realize that there was more than what I was looking for. And I think that was the beautiful thing about noticing that actually there is so much knowledge, there's so much wisdom, there's so much experience out there that sometimes we're just imprisoned from or sheltered from, and we will never get to experience unless we put ourselves out there. So when I had that moment in revelation of almost meeting him and feeling like, wow, there is something more I should be doing with my life, I was just happy that there was someone who could show me the way. And I think that's often what we're looking for. We're looking for someone or a group of people that can expose us to a new way of thinking, new ideas, new pathways, and that can lead to a whole new world.
And then you, as I understand it, it's not like you just sort of like walked out of there, picked up some robes, at the nearest fabric store and sort of got on a plane and moved to India. You sort of incrementally tried this out. So on your summer vacations, and so you were able to experience this lifestyle, still do the things that were quote unquote expected of you in terms of getting an education and things like that. And then eventually you made the decision to go in full time. So when you did that, I can imagine, your family, your parents, your friends probably were concerned.
Yes.
That you had sort of been on the primrose path, and now you were going to do something rather radical. Obviously not hurting other people, but, potentially, for example, taking certain vows of poverty and chastity and maybe not having a family, all kinds of things that are major life decisions. So there's a lot going on there. How did that conversation go down? And like, how were you able to convince the people in your life that you were doing something that was good for you and not something that was hurting you?
Yeah, I think I've had a technique that's worked for me for a long time now where I prepare people for things that are going to happen a few years down the line. So I remember telling my parents when I was 18, I was like, oh, I'm going to become a monk one day. And they're like, yeah, whatever. Like, it's never going to happen. And at 19, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to become a monk one day. And, they're like, whatever. And then when at 21, 22, going on 22, and I was like, no, now I'm really going to do it. There was a lot of preparation for them too. And I think this is a part of, I'm always trying to see how this applies to anyone who's listening and watching to this. It's like, for me, it's preparing people and sharing and updating them on where you're at in life. And I find that a very useful thing to do in general with anyone and everyone today. If I'm having a new realization or I'm making a move, I always inform a few people that are close to me that care about me, because I don't want them to have this radical moment where they're like, Jay, you've changed so much. But even having given all those updates, my extended family was like, you're never going to get a job again. How are you ever going to make money? Who's ever going to date you, or will you ever date again? You're not going to have kids. Who's going to take care of your family? Who's going to take care of your parents? Like, all of that pressure. And then my friends being like, Jay, what are we going to talk about anymore? Like, we used to talk about women and girls all the time. Like, can you not talk to me about that anymore? Like, what's going to be and I was like, wow, is that all we ever talked about? Like, I was like, wow, like, is that the level of our conversation that's what we're going to miss talking about? So you start feeling all that pressure. And I think whether you're deciding to be a monk or whether you're deciding to go and follow your passion or try something new or whatever it is, I think everyone hears this noise in some way or the other. And for me, the key was my voice had to be louder than the noise. And I think that's the challenge that all of us face every single day, is that we're not following our intuition, the noise is louder than the voice, or we're following our intuition and the voice is louder than the noise. Thankfully, based on all the summer vacations I'd taken to live as a monk, I developed the ability to hear my voice and my values and what was calling me in that direction. So if I'm completely honest, at the time, I didn't really feel any pressure, because I was so convinced that I was doing the right thing. And I think that confidence and that conviction came from the fact that I'd actually experienced what I was about to get into. So like you said, it wasn't just like, oh, I'm done with the material world and here we go into the spiritual robes. It was, oh, wow, I've experimented with both these lives of business and of monkhood for 3 years. And now I've made this very coherent, intentional decision that I'm happier doing this life.
And it's about trust too. I think about, whether it's in a family situation or whether you're working for a company and your company one day comes in and they say, yes, what, we've decided we're closing down the office and we're doing this and that and the other. And it's sort of like, you know what, if you trusted me and you valued this relationship and you valued my contribution, you would respect me enough to prepare me. And you would know that I'm an adult and that I can handle this. And maybe it's not the greatest thing that ever happened. Maybe I don't like what you've told me, but give me the benefit of the doubt that I can handle this.
That's a great way to put it. I'm really glad you brought that up. That's an awesome way to put it, because I think you're so spot on that it is that feeling of like, that person's an adult, they can handle it. And the trust element that you just brought about, I think I love that. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and I also think, by the way, people know. I mean, people always know. People have intuition is a very powerful, especially not everybody is in touch with their intuition, but a lot of people are. And so they probably even know it's coming at them the minute you say it.
Yeah, people know it, but when you make something official, it hurts more. And that's what I realized, that my family knew I was going off to live like a monk every summer. But when I decided, I was like, now I'm becoming one. It was like, no, like, it's almost like the end of the world moment. I'm like, wait a minute, you knew I was into this stuff for the last 3 years. So I almost feel like when you make something official, people's noise is going to go through the roof. Yeah. And that's why it's so important to either not announce something when it's official until you're ready, or expect that the noise is going to get so loud that you better be ready for it. So I noticed this a lot in a lot of friends that have a similar experience when they quit their day job and they start pursuing their passion, or they start pursuing what they love. And what they do is that they go on Instagram or Facebook and they announce that they've just quit their safe job. Now, half of the responses are, oh, I'm so happy for you, this is awesome. But half the responses are like, you idiot, you realize you've just given up like a safe salary, a safe job, whatever it is. And now they're almost doubting their situation, because they're like, oh, maybe I made the wrong decision. So I think if you're about to make a big decision in your life, don't announce it. Keep it private, deal with it, speak to the people that matter. And the second thing is, if you are going to tell people about it, expect the noise. So don't be surprised when it comes. Like, don't be shocked when you now start doubting your decision because so many people are coming at you.
So you did this for several years. You lived as a monk, 100%. And then you reached a point where your teacher said, "Listen, I think your gift is to go out into the world and share what you've learned here," which was a difficult time to leave because you were, very, I would say, content in that lifestyle. And then you did that, and you went back to London, and you started sharing what you learned. Eventually, you started out with making videos online, and now it's turned into, I would say, a media empire. When people start out, because I think it's funny. I spoke I'm from the state of Maine, and I spoke at a junior high school, and I asked the kids what they wanted to be, and like the answer to this. Like 2/3 of them want to be YouTube influencers, which is, I think, is cool. Like I love, we all should have dreams that are impractical or whatever when we're kids. Not to dismiss it, but it's not easy, right? It's a ton of work.
Yeah.
And you started out, and I imagine in the beginning you were making these very simple videos and probably didn't get a lot of views, and over time they grew, and you started to be able to share your work with other people. And so, I'm sure we have people listening here who, maybe they don't want to be an Instagram influencer, but they're thinking like, how do I tell stories online in a way that is real?
Yeah.
And so as you think back on your own journey, like tell me what you think was important to discover in order to have the impact that you were looking to have.
Yeah. So I've really sat down and reverse engineered my process too, because I have a company that helps people build their brands and grow their online followings from a genuine storytelling point of view. And so I went and sat back and I was like, well, what did I do? So I nailed it down to these 3 things, which will hopefully help people from a more... The reason why I'm giving this answer is I want to give people a more practical methodology,
Totally.
as opposed to giving them like an inspirational spiel that they'll be like, yeah, I've heard that before, but what do I actually do? So there are 5 key storytelling themes that actually have the potential to go viral. I didn't know this when I started, but I've thought backwards and I realized this now. So the New York Times did an article on like the 7,000 pieces of content that got the most traction. And they found that all of those were based on these 5 areas: adventure, humor, emotion, inspiration, and surprise. So adventure is people jumping off mountains, cliffs, bungee jumping, skydiving. Adventure, you know what adventure is. Humor, obvious, cats, dogs, babies, anything funny happening. Emotion is the news. The news spreads fast because it has an emotional trigger, right? You have inspiration, which my work would go into that category. And then you have surprise, right? So those 5 areas, and they're all feelings. So the big question is, what does your content make someone feel after they watch it? And I think this is a question not many people ask. Most people ask the question of, what do I want people to learn? What do I want people to take away? Or, hopefully people like this, right? But it's like, what do I want people to feel? And so it has to be one of those 5 things if you really want it to have an impact in storytelling. The second principle is, what's my role? And this is a really, really important one. Today, I think we live in a world where everyone believes that they have to be the face, the star of the show. They have to be the front and center. The funny thing is, there's a lot of people who are very successful, sometimes even more successful than the star of the show, that are behind the scenes. You know, Steven Spielberg's never starred in his own movie, right? He's not trying to trade roles with Leonardo DiCaprio. He's very happy being the director. So the second thing is, what is your role? Like, are you really the star of the show? Are you really the talent? Or are you the director, the producer, the editor, the writer, the host? Like, which role do you play? And I think that is such a deep self-awareness point that you have to ask. And, and think like a monk, I'm constantly pushing self-awareness of being honest with yourself. And it takes a lot of honesty to say, you know what, actually, I'm a better writer than I am a better speaker. Let me go and do that. Right? That takes some honesty. And then finally, the third set is, what format suits me the best? Am I the best when I'm interviewing someone? Am I the best when I'm being interviewed? Am I the best when I'm talking directly to camera? Am I the best when I'm vlogging away like David Dobrik and his whole crew? Or am I better when I'm doing makeup tutorials? Like, what format helps you win? And so you would be able to find the genre, the role, and the format. If you nail those 3, you know where to start. And I think most people don't think like that. They just go, I want to have like 1 million views. What's the funniest thing I can do? And when you start like that, you start a journey that loses. You feel less satisfied the more that journey continues, because you now started. And if you got lucky to have a moment, which was luck anyway, but if you were lucky enough to have a moment doing something you don't find satisfying, guess what? You're going to keep trying to recreate that moment. And now you're on this downward trajectory, hating what you do every day because you get 1 million views. And I know so many creators that had a moment doing something they didn't love, and then your life continues being a moment that you don't love. So to me, it's better to figure this out up front.
FOMO. FOMO. One thing I saw about your history is that when you were a kid, you were like a chunky, nerdy kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I was too.
Mm-hmm.
So I get that. And so I've always felt like one of the things that's kind of a superpower is that like, I don't really care because I got picked on so much as a kid that sort of like, I built up the armor. And so number one, I'm less likely to pick on other people because I know what that feels like. But number two is somebody thinks what I'm doing is bad or stupid. I know that, generally if I believe what I'm doing, this too shall pass. And that it's more important to focus on helping the people who do believe in what you're doing. So I'm curious as you think about that particular, like, do you feel like that's contributed to the way that you see the world? The fact that you maybe as a kid you were picked on, and does that make you more resilient when people criticize the work that you do?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that you could definitely draw parallels between that and resilience. And I remember being bullied in school and being left out and, being laughed at for reading and whatever it was. And just, it definitely made me more compassionate to other people being bullied. Like that was a big thing that came from it, that I don't really like standing for watching someone else be picked on anymore or being bullied for something that they may not even be aware of or whatever, maybe, especially as a kid. So it's made me more empathetic to anyone else now who has that challenge. And I think having made so many mistakes and failures in my life has also made me more empathetic to people who make the same mistakes. So I rarely look at someone who makes the same mistakes that I did and judge them because I'm like, wait a minute, that was me. Like that's exactly the same mistake I made 2-3 years ago, 5 years ago. And so let's stop. Like I can't remember who it was. I believe it's a 50 Cent lyric, but he said you shouldn't throw stones if you live in a glass house. And then he goes on to rhyme it with something else.
Something about a mouse, maybe.
He says if I can remember this right, and if you've got a glass jaw, you should watch your mouth, like something like that, right? That was Anyway, okay. A little bit of 50 Cent in there, but the reason why I'm saying that is just I just feel like when you've failed or you've made mistakes or you've been bullied or picked on, that should just give rise to more empathy and non-judgment. Because you start realizing that you made the same mistakes, you made the same failure. And in your regard to like, has that made me more resilient and thick-skinned? I think it definitely has. But hey, no one likes. It's hard being picked on by people you don't know and people they don't know you. And I think that's the hardest thing. It's like, because what you want to do is sit that person down and say, hey, just talk to me like a person. Like, let's just connect, like get to know me and understand why I made this mistake or why I got that wrong or why I didn't think about this. Like, let's just talk. Like we're meeting right now today. And it's like, if we were to talk it out, we'd learn so much more about each other. I think that's what creators struggle with. That there are people picking on you or your work or what you think or anything about you, whatever it may be, that don't know you. And for me, I think the biggest answer came from a conversation I had with Simon Sinek. So I interviewed him about 4 years ago. I don't know if you know who Simon is.
Of course, start with why.
Yeah, so Simon, when I interviewed him, he gave a great piece of advice because he spoke about this. He said that when he used to first get criticized online, and he got a lot of it, he said that they would reply and have a strategy to combat it for everyone who gave him negative advice. But he started to notice very quickly that he was literally sitting in rooms with people who had negative feelings about him, and he wasn't able to convince them. He was like, why am I wasting so much time? He said, but guess what? We never replied to the people who gave positive comments.
Wow.
We never connected with them. We never gave them an opportunity to sit in the room with me and talk to me and have that moment. And he was like, that's where it flipped. And I thought that was such a great piece of advice. And I got that very early on in my journey. So I took that. I replied to nearly every comment that's positive. I replied to anyone who takes time out to share a story. I post so many stories of people who are listening to my work. So I'm like, let me celebrate that. Like, this person's taking so much time. And we just disregard them. And I think we do the same when we go out. If you go out to a party tonight or you go out to dinner, 99% of people say, you look amazing. And then one person says, oh, those shoes with that shirt, that doesn't work. Like, oh, your hair looks weird today, or you look tired today. And you go home thinking about that one person who didn't like you or didn't like what you were wearing or how you seemed. And we do that. Our mind plays the trick on us. And in Think Like a Monk, I talk about how the mind amplifies and magnifies the negative and completely breezes over the positive. And we do it all the time in every form of our life. If you see positive comments on a video, you will literally zoom past them and look for the negative one.
Yeah,
we literally do that. And it's like the worst habit in the world. But when have you ever stopped? And I posted this a few weeks ago, and I was talking about how, when you fail, you cry for 7 days. But when you succeed, you party for one night. there's an issue there. There's a reason why we let emotionally pain affect us so much more deeply, because we immerse and submerge ourselves in pain, but we never immerse ourselves in joy of winning. We just let it pass by. And that's why we can have bad memories stick around longer than good memories.
I had never really thought about the fact it's true. You skip over all the good stuff. It's like,
I see people do it all the time.
Like, the Facebook, your birthday, you get like 300 people that say happy birthday. You're like, oh, whatever. And then,
totally.
And then you think about the person who didn't.
Who didn't message you. Exactly. That's a great example. Yeah. And that's something we need to switch. And that doesn't mean that you now shut yourself off from good feedback. I think that's the point, is that you take the constructive elements of any feedback. Sure. If you're getting negative comments, you're getting bad feedback, take the work and make the change. Let your work speak for that, but really celebrate. And I don't mean celebrate by complacency or read good comments about yourself every day to boost your ego, but just don't undervalue it. Don't undervalue someone taking the time to write 4 lines about why this podcast is so great. Like, it's worth it, like take a moment.
So I want to shift gears now and talk about your book because a lot of the elements of our discussion so far have been teasing at that. So let's jump right into it. So your book, Think Like a Monk, draws on the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita, which was written between 800 and 400 BCE, before the Common Era. And it's these sacred Indian texts. And then so you studied these, obviously, when you were training as a monk, and then brought these back to your life in the UK. And in the book, you show us a pathway to apply this wisdom to the modern age. So I want to focus on a couple of things. There was a lot in this book, but there were particular things that I
love that.
Loved. And so I want to get into those specific elements today. So let's start. And I never heard of this either. I guess maybe this is common saying, but the monkey mind. I hadn't heard of that concept. So you talk about 2 types of mind, the monkey mind and the monk mind. Yeah. And you describe and you list out the characteristics. And the monkey mind, when I saw that, I was like, well, that's the person who feels the fear of missing out and the fear of a better option.
100%.
FOMO and FOBO.
Spot on.
For all of us here who maybe haven't quite understood what those are, what is the monk mind? What is the monkey mind? And what is the difference between the 2 of them?
Absolutely. Yeah, great question. So the monkey mind is both a term from sacred texts and what modern psychologists have defined to talk about the part of our mind that is always distracted, that is unfocused, the parts of our mind that is always complaining, comparing, and criticizing, the part of our mind that is totally trying to chase everything that it sees, the part of our mind that is that feels the anger, that feels the resentment, that holds on to the pain that someone has caused us. Like, that's the monkey mind. And I think the monkey mind is what we experience all of the time. It's what causes us any sort of pain. And you can visualize a monkey jumping from branch to branch to branch, just trying to find a banana, like not really being satisfied where it is, constantly being scattergun. Like, if you've ever viewed a monkey, monkeys are pretty chaotic creatures in an external sense. And the monk mind is the antidote to the monk mind. So where the monkey mind is comparing, complaining, and criticizing, the monk mind is calm, collective, and conscious. Where the monkey mind is jumping from branch to branch, the monk mind is focused and effective. Where the monkey mind is completely uncontrolled and regretful, the monk mind is intentional and specific about what it wants to do. So the monk mind is the mind that we want to move towards. And in the book, I'm trying to build that pathway for people. And so I describe it as being let go, grow, and give. And this, to me, are really the tenets of any transformation in life. If you want to do anything, if you're moving house, you have to let go of a bunch of stuff. You have to grow in a different way, and you have to finally give and serve people through that. If you're trying to change your body or your mind, there are going to be things that you need to leave behind. There are going to be new ideas that you have to adopt. And finally, you want to be able to give them away and serve people, because that's kind of like the final moment of recognizing that what you did really worked. So that's kind of like the full picture of the monkey mind and the monk mind.
And I'm sure people are coming to you all the time offering you things. It's like, Jay, why don't you go on a speaking tour? Jay, what have you ever thought about doing a television show? Jay, why don't you do this and that? I'm sure it happens, right?
Yes.
Which could lead you into the monkey mind, into the world of FOMO. And yet, this is what you do for a living, so you have the tools. So when those things happen to you, how do you personally deal with this?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a study that I talk about in Think Like a Monk where it shows that, studies show that only 2% of the world's population can multitask. And when people hear that, they think they're in that 2%.
I just did.
Yeah,
I was like,
exactly. You're like, yeah, I'm yeah. And the answer is that most of us are in that 98%. And even multitasking is not real, because what you're doing, as scientists say, is that you're just you're literally moving from task to task at quicker intervals. So you're still never actually multitasking. Like, it's not actually possible. You are just switching quicker between things. And so what I try and do, and this has been a practice that I've really developed, and not everyone can develop it in the same way if you're not in charge of your schedule, but I would say the closer you can get to it, the better. So immersive, deep, focused experiences are far more powerful for the mind. So if you're doing a podcast, just do a podcast. Imagine we were doing a podcast and I was trying to write my book right now, or I'm trying to sign 30 copies of my book right now. I know I'm not going to do either well. And what I've tried to do is I've tried to create a schedule where, for example, this week I've been in New York City and all I'm doing is going on podcasts. Now, that's 75% of my day. I also have businesses that I manage. I also have teams that I manage. So 25% of my day is spent being a multitasker. But 75% of my day is dedicated to what I'm actually trying to do right now, which is talk about these amazing themes that I've had so much time to study and write about. And so as much as you can, block create. So the mind can't be logical and creative at the same time. So the amount of people trying to walk from a creative marketing meeting to a business logics budgeting meeting, you're literally stressing yourself out and causing more burnout and more friction in your mind. The best way to solve that is have marketing days and budgeting days, or marketing mornings and budgeting afternoons. The more you can break down all of that into simplicity for your mind, the more effective and productive you're going to be. So I've spent the last month recording podcasts for my podcast for the last 30 days. So all I was doing was banking content, creating content in bulk, so that now for the next 3 months, I don't have to create that content. And then I can really focus on what I'm doing right now, which is being present with you. So I never wanted to live in the pressure of creating what I call pressure content, right? Creating content where you're making it out of like, oh my God, I need to be creative today. Like, as soon as I walk out of this interview with Patrick, I've got to somehow come up with the viral video idea. It's just not going to work. And so it's the same as why we break down leg day. We break down arm day. Like at the gym, you don't go to the gym and do everything every day. You have specific focuses. So at least make 75% of your day or 75% of your week about the thing you want to win at. And I get it, 25% of your day is going to be other stuff.
So I imagine I'm putting myself in your shoes a lot today. But I imagine that you have, again, choice-rich environment, lots of things being offered. And so it's like, well, I could commit to do this thing, but, God forbid I have a better opportunity come along. Because right now, I'm in the process of doing things and new people are finding out about me. I might have something better come along. How do you feel the conviction to commit to certain opportunities and not wait for something better to come along down the line? How do you decide?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the way I've always done it is I set out I decide what I feel success to me looks like in a year or for a project. So for me in 2018, success to me was really dialing in on the content I was creating online. Success to me in 2019 was launching my podcast. Success in 2020 is launching my book. So that's what I'm focused on. So I'm very clear, first of all, about what I really care about. On top of that, I'm now looking at other opportunities coming in. I'm saying, is it serving this bigger goal? If it's serving this bigger goal, then I can take it right now because it's direct, right? It's a direct thing that's going to have an impact right now on the goal that I have. If I'm rarely holding out for a hopeful long-term win. If there's a strategic long-term win, then I can wait. So I'll give an example. I had an opportunity. The first time I got an offer for a book deal was after my first viral video. So I had a video that went viral. We did about, I think it was 1 million views in a day and 24 million views in a week or something like that. And the next day I got a call from a publisher. They wanted to meet me. We went out to lunch and they said, Jay, you need to write a book. Now I was like, okay, and it's funny because I had this same title in my mind, but I didn't really know what would fully go into it. And I was like, I think I need to build a following and build a community and understand my community and think about there was just so much going on. It was the first time a video had ever gone viral. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to wait because I think I'm going to have a better opportunity to do this. And the question is, the better opportunity is not, am I going to have a better opportunity from the external? Am I going to be better for the opportunity? And that's how I come back to it. It's like, can I be better for this opportunity that I'm getting. If I can be better, then I'll wait. If I can't be better, I better take this right now because I'm not going to get it again. And so for me, that's how I go about it is, am I going to be in a better position to do more justice to this opportunity that I'm receiving? Or am I in my best position to do justice to this opportunity right now? So I'll give an example of, I was asked recently to be in a fun trailer for the Bad Boys movie. And it came as a call from Sony Pictures, and they were like, we'd love for you to do this trailer, and we want you to play a life coach, and we want you to give a couples therapy coaching session to Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. I was like, I'm like, that is so cool. Like, I grew up as a huge fan. I can't wait.
That's great.
I'm like geeking out on the phone. And I was just like, I can either be like, oh no, there's probably going to be a better opportunity than this, or I'm going to take this right now. And so I said yes to the opportunity. I went to acting class for 4 days in a row just to do this trailer because I wanted to be prepared. And for me, it was like, that was the best time to take that opportunity. So there's always an opportunity for there to be a better opportunity. Always. You can never mathematically calculate the odds of that. It's always going to be there. But ask yourself, is this opportunity matching my current skill set? If it is, take it. If you know that your skill set's going to grow and you're going to grow and you can attract a better opportunity, invest in your skill set, not in hope. And I think that's what we do. We will hope that there'll be a better opportunity rather than saying, I'm going to upskill so much better that the opportunity is going to be better.
And that's the end of part 1 of my interview with Jay Shetty. We'll be back next week with part 2, where we'll be talking more about how to think like a monk and how you can actually put some of these things into practice. In the meantime, check out Jay's book, Think Like a Monk, and find him on Instagram at Jay Shetty. And by the way, he and I will be doing an Instagram Live, so look at his Instagram and mine, Patrick J. McGinnis, to see when that's going to happen. I'll see you there, hopefully. And if not, we'll see you next week on the pod. FOMO. If you like today's show, please be sure to rate it and recommend it to your friends. And as always, you can find me on Instagram at Patrick J. McGinnis, on Twitter at PJ McGinnis, and on the web at FOMOSAPIENS.com or PatrickMcGinnis.com, where you can get all kinds of free resources to live a more decisive and entrepreneurial life. FOMO Sapiens is recorded in New York City. Theme music is by Mike McGinnis, and editing and post-production is by Josh Elstrom. If you like today's show, please be sure to rate it and recommend it to your friends. And as always, you can find me at FOMOSAPIENS.com and at PatrickMcGinnis.com. To advertise on FOMO Sapiens, reach out to contact@FOMOSAPIENS.com. FOMO.